welcome to AusBizAsia. I'm Sarah Clark. Coming up, we meet the Australian golf course designers who carved a solid slice of the action in Asia. And the media and communications duo who've set up their own successful agencies in Hong Kong and over 20 years have got a network that would make many green with envy. Between the two of you, you both seem to know the whole of Hong Kong. Is that part of the job?
Yes. I know one half, she knows the other.
I've been called Google on legs before, and I did take that as a bit of a compliment, yes.
And what are the biggest financial landmines that expats often overlook when taking the big leap overseas? But first, it's considered one of world racing's jewels in the crown. And this season, the horse racing industry in Hong Kong is set to turn over a record $13 billion US. The industry attracts some of the world's best trainers and jockeys, with the Hong Kong Jockey Club delivering a slick and successful sport that's considered the #1 favourite in this region. Amongst the big hitters are a number of Australians who are at the top of their game, including this year's champion in the saddle. It's the most competitive racing circuit in the world. There's big crowds, big betting, and some of the industry's best jockeys ride this track.
Well, Hong Kong's known as the racing mecca of the world. Obviously the prize money here is fantastic, the class of horses is fantastic, and for me as a young jockey coming through, it was more about getting that international experience.
Moving to Hong Kong has been a game changer for jockey Zac Purton. Not only has he secured the international experience, he's ridden his way to the top and won the Hong Kong Jockeys Premiership title.
Yeah, it's good. Douglas White has won the championship for the past 13 seasons in a row, and obviously when I came here everyone said he would never be beat. Good to come back this season and be in the fight again and get the job done, so I'm pretty happy about that.
He and his wife Nicole moved here 7 years ago. Both have grown up on and off the racetrack. He is an apprentice in Queensland and New South Wales, and she's racing royalty, with her father Jimmy Cassidy often referred to as the emperor of the racetrack in Australia.
I was quite friendly with her father before I met Nicole. Tested the friendship there for a while, but it's all good now. Once he realised that I was in there for the long haul, then he was good. Coming from the racing background I think helps. He understands a lot more than what a normal person would.
Yeah, I am very proud. He's worked very hard for 7 years every day we've been here, and before we came to Hong Kong, but here you work hard every single day, and he deserves all the success that he's had, and yeah, hopefully there's more to come as well.
The couple is part of an industry in Hong Kong that lives and breathes racing. For 10 months of the year, there are 2 race meets every week, with thousands flocking to the track to take a punt.
And so you do see extraordinary crowds drawn to the races. I mean, you can have, say, 120,000 people at Sha Tin for Chinese New Year, and another 5,000 at Happy Valley watching it just on the screens. It's a real engagement with the sport, which in some countries it's been lost, but here there's a real affinity with racing.
Andrew Harding left his role as the Chief Executive of the Australian Racing Board 2 years ago to take up a new position as the Hong Kong Jockey Club's Racing Development Manager. He says the industry here is in a league of its own.
Other countries perhaps going through some heavy weather, America, Japan. Singapore's had its troubles with the opening of the casinos there. Australia's still growing, France, but Hong Kong, last season growth in wagering of about 11%, about that this year, maybe a bit more. Attendances at record levels, and the quality of the horses here, what they're achieving internationally, and the rating of our best races on the international scale. On all those sort of metrics, Hong Kong's performing and outperforming the others.
Last season, around $13 billion was spent at the racetrack, jumping 12% on the previous year. And attendances at the 2 racetracks exceeded 2 million people. That's the highest in a decade.
It is quite extraordinary. Everyone loves to have a bet here. The locals, they just love it.
Jenny Chapman is one of the many Australians riding the hugely popular industry here. She's clocked up 11 years in the saddle as one of Australia's top jockeys and grown up on the racetrack as the daughter of successful Melbourne trainer Kel Chapman. She's also a well-known racing commentator at the Jockey Club, with a solid following of punters who dote on her every call.
I absolutely love it. It's a great place to live. It's always fast, something's happening, and as far as the racing goes, it's always exciting. It's twice a week, and I think that really does make a difference because you look forward to every meeting as opposed to in Australia where it's racing every day. So I think, that's the big issue.
With the average prize money as much as $160,000 on each race, horse owners are prepared to invest big money for a chance of success.
Well, they'd spend $1 million, no problem at all, to buy yearlings. The Hong Kong Jockey Club are one of our biggest clients.
As a racing veteran, David Chester knows this market well. He's spent almost 50 years in the industry, pioneering auction sales in Singapore, Macau, Malaysia and the Philippines. And he says Hong Kong is one of the strongest markets.
They buy quality horses and they pay the right sort of money for those horses. Hong Kong is a city that's famous for its brands and selling brands, and they want to buy the best.
For Zach Purton, taking the title of Hong Kong's champion jockey is just the beginning of his time in the saddle in this region. He and his wife Nicole are also expecting the arrival of their first child. And like most of the Australians riding this industry here, they're happy to be a part of one of the most competitive circuits in the world.
For me now, it's just about being a big player in the big races around the world and just enjoying myself. At the end of the day, I enjoy life, and I'm very lucky that I'm in the position I'm in.
Yeah, I love Hong Kong. I don't see in the immediate future us needing to go home. I would be happy anywhere as long as I'm with Zach. I'm quite happy. But Hong Kong, we love it, so I can see us staying for a fair bit longer, hopefully, if they'll have us.
Starting your own business can be a challenging move, but starting it in another country adds a whole new level of complication. But for two Australian women who moved to Hong Kong around 20 years ago, both have now not only set up their own agency, they're now major players in the communications and media industries in this region. And they're happy to share their advice with those considering going it alone. Mary Cavata and Kim Kenchington, thank you very much for joining the program. Now let's start with you, Mary. You now own your own communications agency, which you founded in 2002. What triggered you to go out on your own?
I really think it was seizing the moment and the opportunity that was at hand. I'd been working with Carabiner International, that was acquired then by Jack Borden as the Director of Business Development, working with many large clients to include ING Bank, Morgan Stanley, PCCW. And during that process and working over the years, I'd really established relationships with a number of clients. And having worked already in Hong Kong for over 5 years, I'd really been able to connect, and at the same time the region was booming. So I really felt that there was a need for branding and marketing communication services.
Kim, you also run and own your own successful media representative agency. Was it difficult to establish your name in Hong Kong?
I had a slightly fortuitous way of getting into being self-employed. I was working for a company as an employee for 8 years, and that company was sold. So I went into the new merged operation as the General Manager Lifestyle Titles. When that didn't work, I didn't particularly like it, and then I set up my own company. And fortunately, those publishers that I had worked with over the previous 8 years, they came with me. So I had an instant business by virtue of being an employee. I then became self-employed. So I was very lucky.
Why did you leave Australia? Was it that you were seeking more opportunity?
Oh gosh, I only had one dream, was to make money, and I've fulfilled my dreams.
And did you have to leave Australia to do that?
Yes, I felt I did. I left school at 16. I didn't complete my education, and I just felt that that was probably going to hamper me competing with everyone else, all my buddies doing university degrees. That didn't interest me. I had a passion for travel. That was my buzz, and I just knew I'd pick something up along the way. And I ended up in Hong Kong, a city which I had travelled to before, and I just loved the buzz, and I still love the buzz 25 years later.
You work with some big luxury brands. Could you have only got those brands if you were working, say, in Hong Kong?
Yes, we're lucky in Hong Kong that Hong Kong headquarters a lot of the Asian branded hotels, for example. Here we are at the Island Shangri-La. I also work with Peninsula and Mandarin, and a lot of the luxury brands are either headquartered here, you get the Chanels, the Graf Diamonds, Rolex, Mercedes, etc., or they have decentralized divisions across the Asia region. And we work with all those big brands. Now in Australia, it tends to be more of a domestic market, and they're not looking at international brands. If I make the odd call into Australia, a territory that I can cover, they don't have the budget, nor necessarily the interest, to be in Vogue Taiwan, for example. They will keep to the Vogue Australia brand. For travel, it's very much a domestic market using Australian domestic titles. They won't go into something like Condé Nast Traveller, where here in Asia, our Asian hotels, they love to reach the long haul markets, so they'll go into a Condé Nast, a US edition, the Russian edition, the Italian, the Spanish, the Chinese edition, but we don't get that level of movement out of Australia. So the situation here with Hong Kong being a hub for all of Asia was perfectly aligned with the titles that I represent.
The key to getting ahead and owning your own business, what's your advice?
Well, one of the key things in Asia is really understanding three things, really. First is the respect and for cultural differences and the diversity in cultures here in Hong Kong and in the region, and understanding how to integrate the culture, appreciate and respect culture. The second is really connections, developing those connections and networking, and really connecting. You need to build bridges. You don't burn your bridges here in Asia in particular. So you develop those relationships, and the other is really, the third is probably image. It's important how you communicate, how you present, how you come across, and there really is, it's important that you understand all of those aspects in surviving here.
Face-to-face connections, are they crucial to doing business in Asia?
Integral.
Yes,
Integral.
correct,
It's like, it's a mandate. I mean, you need to have those people skills, and it doesn't matter where you're going. You might be doing your supermarket shopping, wherever you are, you need to be, on and
switched on.
And be focused, but also understand what you're doing. So I think it's a very important part of how you connect with people. And as I said earlier, respect for culture and cultural diversity, very, very important. And understanding, because, Asia is made up of 14 plus countries, and each Asian country will have the idiosyncrasies of that particular culture. So often people will think that if you do business in Hong Kong, it's what it's like across the region, but it actually isn't.
Between the two of you, you both seem to know the whole of Hong Kong. Is that part of the job?
Yes. I know one half, she knows the other.
I've been called Google on legs before, and I did take that as a bit of a compliment. Yes, I think 25 years here in Hong Kong and in the region, and loving every single day. I think it shines through, and you can tell. Yes, between Mary and I, we know a lot of people. Yeah. It's great fun. Still loving it.
Both of you, could wild horses ever drag you both back to Australia?
For
Mum, are you watching?
For retirement, yes, but for work, unlikely.
Looking at opportunities and working here in Asia, is there still a lot more growth that you can see for your business?
In my line of business, we are print specialists, and now we're becoming digital media specialists. And going back to Mary's conversation earlier, that Australia is very advanced in digital marketing, and so are the clients in the platforms and how they build their marketing strategy for digital. In Hong Kong, it is still very, very premature, and a client will be happy with a leaderboard or buying an MPU 1 or 2, and really it's far beyond that. So we are becoming now school teachers, as it were, back into the digital line of business as we were print when we started 24 years ago. So that's a whole new growth area, is going to digital with our existing publications or with pure digital products.
And the future for you, Mary?
There are so many changes taking place internationally and regionally, and I think one of the key things is to, I always believe, is yes, being flexible, but just doing what you love and following your passion and your dreams, and keep going. Don't give up.
Mary Cavata and Kim Kenchington, thank you very much for joining the program.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Golf isn't just a popular sport, it's also a multi-billion-dollar global industry. One of the truly niche professions within the industry is the job of golf course designer. Australians Ted Parsons and Jason Winter are two designers who plied their trade here in Asia for about 20 years and built around 60 courses. Timothy McDonald caught up with them for a few holes at one of their courses in Kuala Lumpur, where their company is based.
Ted Parslow turned a lifelong passion for golf into a career. After years designing courses in Australia, he came to Malaysia. It happened after the Japanese backers of a major project in Queensland teed off and then landed in the rough.
Really the next day my clients were back in Japan, not to be seen again. And so from having some major projects on hand, all of a sudden I had basically nothing apart from a small project in Malaysia where I was just starting to do early conceptual work. And so I came up here to push that project faster than it would originally have been, and just to see what was going on up in this part of the world.
It turns out it was a good move. Golf has struggled in the more mature markets. In the US, more courses have closed than opened for the past 8 years. But Asia is a growth market, although there are still ups and downs.
Asia has been a very big growth market in the 90s and early 2000s. China, where we've done quite a bit of work over the years, has quietened down a lot as the government is trying to impose stronger controls over what happens, and probably rightly so. But those controls are still in a state of flux. Once they've resolved that, I think the opportunity for golf to grow then at a reasonable pace will occur again.
The game is the same, but the business side of things developed a little differently in Asia.
It's mainly aimed at the developers creating a profit for their peripheral developments to the golf course, rather than, as was the case in England and America, Australia, it was a field and play golf on the field and nothing around it, just play golf.
Ted Parslow says running a business in Asia is as challenging as one of his courses, especially when a client comes up a little short.
Perhaps it might say payment within 30 days, but you're happy if you get it within 120 or 240 sometimes, whatever. And you can't do too much about it. So that you have to allow for delays in payment, and sometimes, as I said earlier, delays in the project for long periods of time before as it sort of goes on hold, comes off hold, and sometimes disappears entirely.
But designing golf courses is a labour of love for Ted Parslow and his business partner Jason Winter, who followed him over in the early 1990s.
In a few years, I guess I'll have lived here half of my life. I got married here 4 years ago. We're pretty much settled down here for the long term, yeah. You know, people are the same everywhere you go. I think the people here in Malaysia have been fantastic, and really enjoy living here, and very enjoyable working with them as well.
This course is one of their favourites.
This is Kuala Lumpur Golf and Country Club, which we didn't originally do the course, which was done in 91, 2, 3, I think. Then fell into disrepair, and it was taken over by a major Malaysian company who wanted to bring it up to a standard where it could have major tournaments. So we were fortunate enough to get the job to do that, and to do it largely the way we wanted to do it, which is one of the nice things if you can do it the way you want to, rather than have other people impose themselves on what you intend.
Some might disagree, but Ted Parslow insists that designers don't set out to make golfers frustrated. He takes no pleasure in watching professionals land in water hazards or bunkers he's designed. In fact, he says the pros make him nervous for the opposite reason.
What's the score going to be? Are they going to annihilate par on this course or not? And then you think, God, maybe. And then usually the first round, someone goes 8 or 10 under, and you think, gosh, 30 under or something stupid. But in all the cases here, it's been a sensible score, somewhere in the low teens or mid-teens under in 4 rounds. And to see the course has stood up to the challenge is a satisfying situation.
There are some design features that need to be different here in the tropics. Paved pathways are essential to stop the carts tearing up the grass in this humid and rainy climate. And plenty of golfers prefer to use a cart in this heat.
And apart from anything else, it creates some shade. Like you're in the shade a lot of the time rather than the hot sun. A lot of golfers who do walk end up walking with a sun umbrella anyway to keep in a bit of shade.
Possibly the hardest hole is this par 5, which is over half a kilometre long.
Pretty much the longer hitters, the medium to longer hitters, and they have to think where they place their shots and what club they might want to use to get there in 3, the way that's most likely to succeed. Whereas I guess some of the short hitters are stuck with the fact of trying to get there in 3 when they can't really, and ending up in one or two of the bunkers on the way. So it's a frustrating hole for a lot of the short hitters. Bit left.
The golf business can be just as difficult to navigate. It's something of a luxury, so it's the first thing to go when times are tough. And it's very prone to the whims of the global financial markets. So it's a good idea to think a few holes ahead.
I don't like putting off staff. I don't like cutting things to a bare minimum. So there's a bit of cash from the better times there to pay for the times which are not so good.
But there have been more good years than bad, and Jason Winter says it's very satisfying when a plan comes together.
Just seeing it come to life, you know, spending a lot of time in the office drawing, imagining what it's going to look like, and then I think even during the construction, getting the first bit of grass down is fantastic. It's a great milestone when that happens and you really start to see what it is going to look like. I think that's probably it's right up there with actually hitting your first golf ball playing on the new course.
Over the long term, Ted Parslow and Jason Winter have beaten par, doing what they love.
Moving overseas into a new job can be overwhelming, albeit an exciting time. But so often, getting your bookkeeping in order is overlooked. And for expatriates, the key is to avoid neglecting your finances by keeping your investment and superannuation portfolios in order before you take the big leap. Brett Evans lived in Asia for 11 years and now runs his own financial and investment company, advising Australian expats on those potential landmines. Brett Evans, thanks very much for joining the program. Now let's start with you. You're an expat and you work for a number of blue chip finance operators. Why did you go out and start your own company?
I guess due to my background of being an expat, when I went back to Australia to work in the financial services industry, by default I used to always get questions from colleagues and friends that are still in Hong Kong or greater parts of Asia about their finances, and as time went by and legislation changed and I guess managing finances became harder and harder, more and more questions started to come my way, and that's when we realised that there is a value in having a dedicated service offering to Australian expats. We're the first in Australia to do it, and I think judging by the amount of questions and feedback and commentary I've had in the last couple of years, we're only just sort of scratching the surface anyway. So,
which region across Asia do you have most of your expat clients?
I'd say primarily Singapore, Hong Kong and China. China's probably the biggest growing market for us right now. It blows me away how many Australians are moving to China every week. People talk about the demands of China. I actually think it's only getting bigger. The changes happening in China right now, I guess the demographics of the Aussie expat, typically in Hong Kong or Singapore, would have been either airlines, financial services, legal services. You go to Shanghai now and I'm dealing with landscape designers, people just, social media guys, very different skill sets. So I actually think the Chinese market has now opened the doors to a lot more Australians to become an expat in different categories.
Before Australians do make that big decision to move abroad, what are some of the key financial decisions that you think need to be addressed before people take the big leap?
I think getting tax advice is probably the main thing. Tax laws regarding non-residents are getting more and more strict, and the ATO has been unapologetic in the fact that they are targeting non-residents. So I think having a briefing done by a qualified accountant who has experience in dealing with expats and non-resident issues is probably the most important thing. Set things up before you go, whether it be savings plans, looking at reviewing your super, all these types of issues. By doing that early, when you get overseas, it's already been done. A lot of people do or don't realise that you actually have life insurance and TPD insurance inside your superannuation. Speak to your super provider, see whether they cover you as an expat. Some don't. That's very important. Usually people don't realise these things until it's too late, and they go to make that phone call to the insurer or to the super provider, and they find out that there's actually exclusions excluding them while they've been overseas.
The federal government's made some recent changes to superannuation rules, as well as potentially investing tax-free in the Australian property market. What's your advice here?
I wouldn't call it quite a fad in Australia right now, but the property brokers are really getting hold of this. The fact that you can borrow in super now to buy a property. From an expat point of view, you can only do that type of investment through a self-managed super fund. And generally speaking, expats can't actually have a self-managed super fund because it does not meet the control test. So from a non-residents' point of view, they're pretty much defined to some sort of retail or industry super fund environment for the time being anyway.
How often are you dealing with expats who are caught up in offshore savings and investment bonds being marketed by so-called financial advisors?
Too often, it would be the honest question. There are good and bad financial advisors offshore, and there are sometimes good reasons for investing in these bonds offshore, but the devil's in the detail and in the disclosure. You know, if you're disclosed up front what the fees are, what the handcuffs are like in terms of when you can and can't get your money out, and if you go into these investments fully informed, then there is no problem. It's when people go into these investments thinking that it's a short-term investment and they go to try and redeem some of their money, you know, after a couple of years to find out they're actually locked in for 10 years. That's when, unfortunately, people come to us. By then it's too late. And I've seen penalty fees up to 76% of the value of the investment by only exiting after 5 years.
Looking at tax, how often do you come across a situation where an expat thinks that they're no longer a permanent resident and they're paying a low tax in a country in Asia, but they then get a call from the ATO?
Quite often, to tell you the truth, and I think there's a lot of urban myths or sort of over the back fence type banter when it comes to tax advice, unfortunately, amongst expats. And they'll go down to a bar and have a drink with a guy, and he'll tell them his interpretation of the tax law, and then he'll go off and just believe that as gospel. Definitely, and that's one of the reasons why we say to clients before you go, have that tax brief by an accountant before you leave, because otherwise it can be a very expensive mistake.
You now live in Australia and you're settled there. Do you miss living abroad?
Definitely miss Hong Kong. Both my wife and I are from Hong Kong originally, and you know, we've always sort of considered this as a second home. So coming back here, it's it's just like putting on an old suit. You know, it just sort of fits well. So definitely.
Brett Evans, thank you very much for joining the program.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks for watching the show. Tune in next week to see more stories about Australians doing business in Asia.